Good afternoon, or still morning, I guess. Good morning.
Good morning.
Glad to have you come down to our camp. And this summer when we have the dances, you're all welcome to come, bring your folks, and come and eat with us. It's always open to anybody who wants to have a good Indian meal during the dances that we have. These clothing, a lot of them pertain to our dance. Now, our dance goes back to 1885 when they brought us that drum. And we still do the same thing we did today that we did then. There's an order to this dance. Everything has an order in this dance, in this Elonskin. Doesn't make anything what you do. There's an order to it. And that's one of the things that we're losing today because some of the people that are a part of this don't understand that order. But as a man, there's a way in which you put your clothes on. There's an order to that. And it's a simple thing. You start at the bottom and you go up. Then you come back to camp, you start at the top and go down. A lot of times I'll look over and I'll see a young man put his shirt on first. The first things that goes on are your leggings, your breechcloth, and your tailpiece. Then your bells. Then your garter, or your garters first, then your bells. Your moccasins, your hangdowns. Then your shirt. Then the beads and your Indian medicine, your belt, your otter hide, your choker, your scarf. Then your armbands. Then the last thing that goes on is your headdress, and the very last thing that goes on is your eagle feather. And then when you come back to the camp, the first thing that comes out is your eagle feather, and you go straight down again. And I want our young men to start learning those things. I see too many of them not doing that kind of thing. They're out of order. When you do that, then that dance is out of order. And you got to bring it back into order. So you got to do something to make sure that that comes true. So it's very important that our young men start learning those kind of things. The two most important things in our clothing are the eagle feather and the otter hide. Now this is not a typical feather that we use. The most of the time, and I didn't have one that I brought with me, is the black and white. And the black and white is called a golden eagle. That's one that we like to use. This is a female eagle. So we use those, and we also, the other thing that's very important is the otter hide. And it's here somewhere in this mess.
To the right of you.
Those are the two most important things. And very quickly, and again, when we tell these stories, guys, these are the stories that we know. Your parents may have a different story. And it doesn't mean that they're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and they're wrong. It's just how these stories have been passed down. But in our way of life, that eagle feather comes from the creation story. And in the creation story, there were 4 worlds, and the 4th world is when we came to Earth. We wanted to be productive people. There was nothing to do in that other world, which was those in the sky, the stars. So the ones that came here then wanted to be productive. The ones that stayed are those stars. So we look at the stars at night up there. Those are our people that did not come with us. So they came down, and they lived on a tree, and in front of them was an eagle. He spread his tarsal wings out, and he landed. Those tarsal wings feathers have a symbolic reason to us. But this feather is important because God blessed that eagle. And that blessings comes anytime you have one of these feathers and you fan yourself. You want to fan yourself, or you want to fan someone else. You're giving blessings that you have through those eagles, and they're very important. So that's probably the most important part of the clothing that we have. This otter hide that we hang on the back, it came from a story. My Aunt Rose Pipeston told me a story about it. There was a man who came into a village of our people many, many years ago. And he was walking around, and he was just looking at things. Like today, we have these activities going on. He was going to different people and looking at the different activities they had. And leaders, some of the people kind of frightened him. They didn't know who he was, didn't know what kind of an Indian he was. And our leader said, let him go, leave him alone. So he walked, and finally he left the village. And they told 2 of our men, follow him, and let him go. Don't bother him, just watch and see where he goes. He walked a distance, and finally he came to a river. And he jumped in that river, and he swam. They saw him swimming across the river. And he surfaced on the other side, but he was no longer a human. He was an otter. And my Aunt Rose said because of that, that otter has become very respectful to our people and very sacred to our people. We have two clans in the beginning. We have the sky clan and the land, people of the land, people of the earth. That eagle feather represents the people in the sky, and this otter hide represents the people in the land. So those two are the two most important items that we wear in our way of life. These roaches that we have on today, they're made mostly out of deer tail, but the old ones, and there's a few out there that you see, are made out of porcupine and
Turkey beard.
and turkey beard. The red and black ones, small red and black ones you see, a lot of them have on. And those are very kind of sacred to our people too, but we don't have much of them anymore because they're hard to get. There's a lot more to what I have here, but I want Beth to talk to you a little bit more about the women's clothing because you're the females.
The first thing is, when we first got married, the first year that Jerry's family dressed me was 1960. And they told me that Osage women did not carry eagle fans. They carried water birds and red-tailed hawk. Today, women carry, you see Osage women with eagle feather fans, but at that time, they didn't carry them. This is a water bird. Okay.
These coats that you see here, these are wedding coats. Now guys, how those came about. And again, this is a story that we know. It may be different from someone else. But around the 1803, Napoleon in France sent for some of our leaders, and they sent 2 leaders and 2 men over, and 2 women over, their wives. They stayed there for a year. And at the end of the year, Napoleon said you can take anything that you want to take with you. And they chose these wedding coats. And so they brought these wedding coats home. And who did they give them to? They gave them to those first daughters. And when they were young girls, each one had one made. This is my mother's. And this is her wedding coat, and it was made in France. It was actually made in France. We have the boxes there that the epaulets came in that came from France. She never used it because by the time she grew up, those weddings came to an end. They went to Washington, and they liked the top hats that Lincoln and them wore. They liked these plumes. These plumes were on horses. They're actually made out of chicken feathers. Sometimes they're red, yellow, and blue. And they liked those. They put the ribbon around it, a piece of German silver, and this became the top hats that they wore in the weddings. So these came from the weddings. These plumes actually came from an Osage wedding. And one of the last weddings we had was about 1925.
I'm giving this all back to them.
Today's those girls cut them short, don't they?
Well, they're
So
small.
they can get them on.
You
They cut them
always
small so they
started
can get
with
them on
a
real quick.
2-yard skirt turning the other way. And your pattern always goes down the left leg. Now this is a blanket, and they often wore blankets as skirts. And we're not going to have our selvage edges right. And you girls know about selvage edges. Yeah. Now this is a conventional pleat on the side. You will see girls with what they call a butterfly pleat, but I was told that I couldn't wear one of those because I was married, and those are for single women. Look at this belt.
That belt was made for my niece, and my niece is about 6'4".
I'm about 5'4". This should come together in the back. Your belt should be the same length as the bottom of your skirt. We're going to have to overlap here in order for her to keep this skirt. Will you take that one? Pull it around and there. there, she overlapped in the back, and they when they put this on, they would refer to my bustle. Make sure your bustle, you pick up your bustle before you sit down, but they called it my bustle. And that holds up this 2-yard skirt. Today, most girls, you use the amount of broadcloth you need, and you don't have all of the extra. But at any rate, that's how the skirt goes on. Then we would put a shirt on her. She is single, and so she would have 3 pins down the front. Married women wore 2. Grandmothers usually wear 1, that's right. And they usually or often begin wearing black fabric skirts rather than the broadcloth. Is that what you call them?
Yeah.
Wraparounds? That's good to know. You can see on these wedding coats, we would put, if she was a bride or a bridesmaid, and leggings, broadcloth leggings, and moccasins. Today, a lot of girls wear, I'm not even sure what they're calling them, but the hide leggings. I was told that Osage women's leggings were dyed with gall from the animal, and it was yellow in color, like these men's leggings. And they told me that someone had to bring those to you. You didn't just go out and purchase or some for yourself. They had to be brought to you. Usually they wore the broadcloth leggings. The interesting thing about them is they're two-sided. You have 2 patterns on the same pair of leggings. Then you always wore a blanket or a shawl. They even would have these on even when I first came in 1960. People, you could see people with a blanket or a shawl on stirring kettles over that fire. They were usually very simple, not the best that they had, but still, they were people who came from the era where women didn't go without a blanket. They told me when you go into the dance, you should wear a blanket or a shawl, or at least carry it on your arm. Today, you see girls without that, but
Girls with shorts and tennis shoes, it should be that way. Because we're changing, our world is changing.
but they got blankets from a variety of places. And every quarter, when they had to go into Pahuska to be counted and given rations or whatever, people gathered to sell goods to the Osages because the Osages had money to buy. So they traded for blankets. This is an old Pendleton. There were, is it 14, Gary? 14 blanket manufacturers in the United States that produced blankets for Indians. That's how big a market there was. This is a Pendleton shawl, and we know the date of this one because Jerry's mother was born June the 13th, 1913, and her husband went to town in Fairfax and bought
Big
her.
Hill.
Yeah, the Big Hill.
Oh, Big Hill.
And bought her this blanket. So we know this one was is 1913. They traded for, they loved the black shawls with beads, and they traded for these. Now I will tell you, this is hard to wear. It's heavy. And these are Czechoslovak, we talked about, I guess to the boys, we talked about Czechoslovakian beads, and that's what these are, my friends. They're Czechoslovakian cut beads.
These are highly coveted by our females.
Sometimes there were also manufacturers of blankets in Europe. This is a lightweight one that was manufactured in Eastern Europe. But the thing that's very different about this is it's a totally different color on the reverse. Sure is. They traded for these wool. This is wool, very lightweight, but it's still wool from Eastern Europe, and most of these were made in Yugoslavia. In European culture, they're worn on the triangle, and they're called babushkas.
Feels like you're holding nothing.
I bet they like that in summer, don't they? So they traded for Spanish silk, embroidered Spanish silk. They also acquired, from native, other tribes. This is one is it's a Navajo woven, and this was Jerry's grandmother's. Traditionally, they always have a path of exit for evil spirits, and someplace on this one of these rows is wavy down toward the bottom, and that would be your path of exit. And here again, this came from a German company, and by the way, a lot of the broadcloth, which also came from the French. All of these things came from French contact, but you see it's the reverse on the other side. But a lot of the French items were manufactured in Germany.
Is that a heavy material, the one that you just had?
Pardon?
Is that a heavy material?
No, that's very lightweight. These lightweight ones all came from Europe. And they're such a tight weave. And they're really,
That one you just had.
I like that.
Yeah.
All of these were my mother-in-law's, and most of them belonged to her mother.
Most of them are pre-1932.
We
My
also,
grandmother died in 1932, so most of them are pre-1932.
serapes. They traded for serapes. Oops, I'm sorry. I just tripped on her bustle. And then women, Osage women had, this is a modern wooden work blanket. And you wear it the same way. The tragedy about, this is a new one, but the tragedy about a lot of the ribbon work blankets is that ribbon work does not hold up. It rots over the years, even if you have them in trunks. It sort of disintegrates. It's taffeta ribbon and is not as fragile as satin ribbon, but they still deteriorate, where the beadwork blankets give me second and get your, women's broadcloth blankets are worn with the selvage edge at the top and the bottom. Flags in the middle of the back, that's what I want. This, of course, is much too big for them, but then men's blankets are made with two selvage edges put together down the middle of the back. And that's how you tell a woman's blanket from a man's blanket. These two were made for a dance other than the Alonska. This was Jerry's mother's aunt was the first groomkeeper for war mothers. And these were made for she and her husband for the war mothers.
Took that drawn in 1926, so not 1926. I've heard of that soldier dance drum. They call it soldier dance drum. So the women had the soldier dance, and the men had the Osage. Back when my mother was young and a girl, back in the teens and the 20s, the women couldn't dance out. You see how the women dance out with us now? But they dance on the outside. Back then they couldn't dance with us. They had to dance in place. The only time they could dance with us was on Sunday afternoon when they sung those individual songs. But the women had a dance, and that was that soldier dance, and it belonged to them. So we both had a dance in that period of time. We've got a lot of things here. We try to get through as quickly as possible because we ran out of time last time. Got a little time left now. Do you have any questions?
I will show you.
Yeah, I did.
I have a quick question. You said that your husband's family dressed you in 1960. Was that your first time dancing?
It was I came down here to the dances with Jerry in 1959. That was the first time. I'm not Indian.
Okay.
And that was the first time I ever saw the dances. Yeah. And two girls in the family started dancing with me. And his uncle said as we started toward, at that time there was a roundhouse instead of the arbor. And he said, as we started toward the roundhouse, now you take care of them and watch them. I knew a lot less than they did. They coming to the dances all their lives, but they were in their teens.
I was a boy when I grew up in this village. There used to be an old man that lived right there. His name was Woodland JOM. I remember going to his funeral in 1947 over here at the cemetery. And when I was a little boy, they gave us two names back then. They gave us a name when we were a child, and they gave us a name when we were men. My child's name was given to me by him. My father was an Indian. In our way of life, we followed the male line of descent. So my brother and I, when we were born, we didn't have a plan. To show you the type of people that they were. One day they were having a dinner over here, and he called to my mother and told her to bring her two sons with her, and she did. He said, I worry about these boys. They don't have a plan. So he said, I'm going to give them a name. I'm going to put them. He put them in my mother's clan. And so we're part of my mother's clan. And he gave us our Indian names that day. But yet, here was a man who lived in two different worlds. But yet he was still concerned about my brother and I, that we have Indian names. I'm the only person alive today that was named by Old Man Roanhorse. Used to be scared to death of it. There's, you know how those old Indians look, so you've seen pictures of them. Sometimes I look that way, I guess, because people are scared of me. You know, I used to run away from him. My mother said, don't be afraid of him, he gave you your name, but it didn't make any difference, I was still afraid of him. We used to play under that tree right there. His grandson, Victor Akers, and I, had a bunch of boys, and we'd play marbles. I never could do the marbles, they were too good for me. But the old man would sit on the porch and watch us. But he was far away from us, that I wasn't worried that he couldn't catch me if I started running. So this village has a lot of history, tremendous amount of history. Yeah, but I do remember that old man. He was a man who was born in Kansas, came down here, and lived here for many years. And he liked to ride in the morning. His grandson would come home. He'd always been drinking at night, so the old man wouldn't let him go over 20 miles an hour. So he said, I'd be going 20 miles an hour, and I'd pass out and drive into the ditch, and the old man holler at me, and I'd get back on the road again. So we have a lot of stories like that, unfortunately. Unfortunately. Do you have any questions? Yes?
No, you said that you followed the father's plan, and your father didn't have a clan?
No, Dad was a non-Indian. Dad was white. So we followed our brother's clan. Then when our kids were born, they followed their father's clan, so we got back into the right place. We were part of the Eagle clan. There's 3 Eagle clans. We were part of one of those. Okay. You know, the names that my brother and I have is older. They were given to us by my Aunt Maggie Good. That old house out there, south and or north and west of town, that big old east, north and east of town, that was her home. And when she was dying, she gave us our names, and our names go back into another time. There was a man by the name of Governor Joe, and I'm not going to pronounce it in Indian because that's over there, and they'll be laughing at me. But his name interpreted was not afraid of Pawnees. He had 7 brothers. And one of our names were given to us, or when she gave us our names, we were given names of one of her 7 brothers. So I doubt seriously there's anybody living today that has names that come from those people. So our names are kind of unique. Those names, they had meaning to them. My brother's name was Nonsiwa. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. I would be laughing at me. But what it talked about was a person who was, people liked. What was the interpretation of?
Something like winner of hearts.
Yeah, winner of hearts. Winner of hearts. Which means that when he died, he was 39 when he died. And they say it was one of the largest funerals that ever happened here in Osage County. When we entered the cemetery up there, going in the gate, I looked back and that's for the old road. They were still coming around that corner. There were so many cars. He was a winner of hearts. He lived up to his name. People loved him. Little people, old people. So that's the kind of names they gave us. The name she gave me, I could do the best thing every day for the rest of my life and never live up to it. I think the reason why she gave it to me, she must have known me I was going to be lazy. Maybe that name would make me take the next step. So, anyway, that's a little bit about history of the village. Anything else? Any questions? No questions? Rather tired? You only go to school 4 days a week, so you can get tired. All right, we're done. Thank you very much, young ladies. Have a good day. Thank you very much.